Hey, tonight we're diving into one of the most extraordinary yet little-known chapters of European history, the day when pirates from North Africa sailed all the way to Iceland and forever changed the lives of hundreds of families. It's a story of heartbreak and resilience, of people torn from their homes and the strength they found to survive. This journey through time will take us to the Westman Islands of Iceland in the year 1627, where we'll experience one of history's most unexpected encounters through the eyes of those who lived it. But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in Iceland in the summer of 1627. The midnight sun hangs low on the horizon, casting golden light across the rolling green hills of Heimaey, the largest of the Westman Islands. The air smells of salt and fish, and distant seabirds call to one another as they wheel above the cliffs. You've awakened in a world both familiar and strange, a place of incredible beauty and surprising hardship. Your home is a turf house, a building with walls made of flat stones and earth topped with thick layers of grass that grow wild with tiny purple flowers in the summer. The walls around you are 3 feet thick, keeping you warm through the bitter Icelandic winters when howling gales sweep across the island. Your house is partly underground, dug into the hillside for extra protection from the elements. Good news, the turf keeps you wonderfully insulated. Bad news, everything smells faintly of damp earth and smoke from the hearth fire that's rarely allowed to go out. You stretch and rise from your bed, a simple wooden frame filled with dried straw and feathers covered with woolen blankets your mother wove herself. The open room where your family sleeps is called a badstofa, and it serves as bedroom, living room, and workspace all in one. During winter days, everyone gathers here to card wool, knit, repair fishing nets, and carve tools while telling stories to pass the dark hours. The floorboards creak beneath your bare feet as you move toward the small window. It's hardly more than a hole in the wall covered with a thin membrane made from the stomach of a cow. Glass is far too expensive for most Icelandic families, but it lets in a bit of light, enough to see by on most days. Today, the summer light floods in, making the humble room glow. Your father stirs from his sleep and sits up. Jon Egilson is a respected man in the community, a Lutheran minister of the Landakirkja Church on Heimaey. He's a learned man who reads from his precious books of scripture each evening, teaching your family about God's word. His beard is flecked with grey, his hands strong but gentle. Your mother, Asta, is already up, stoking the small fire and preparing the morning meal of skyer, a thick, yogurt-like food that's been a staple in Iceland for nearly 700 years. "Good morning," your father says with a smile. "Today will be a good day for fishing, I think." The sea looks calm. You nod and help your younger siblings dress for the day. There are 3 of them, an 11-year-old brother who looks much like your father, a mischievous 5-year-old sister, and a toddler just learning to speak. Your mother's belly is swollen with another child, due to arrive within weeks. The good news is that you have a loving family, bound together by faith and the daily struggle to survive on this remote island. The bad news is that life here is never easy. Every day is filled with work: fishing, tending sheep, collecting eggs from nesting seabirds on the cliffs, preserving food for the long winter months when fresh supplies are scarce. As your family breaks their fast with skyr and rugbrowd, dense, dark rye bread baked slowly by burying the dough in the ground near hot springs, your father speaks of news heard from a Danish merchant ship that arrived last week. There are rumours, he says quietly, of Turkish pirates raiding towns along the coast of England. The Danish captain says they've taken hundreds of people to sell as slaves. Your mother makes the sign of the cross. Surely they would never come this far north, she says. The journey would be too dangerous. Your father nods, but his eyes remain troubled. Let us pray they do not. But the Danish merchants are building a defensive rampart around their storehouse just to be cautious. After breakfast, you step outside into the summer air. The village of Haimai is small. Only about 500 souls live on the island. The houses cluster together near the harbour, where fishing boats bob on the gentle waves. Beyond the village, green fields stretch up toward volcanic slopes, sheep grazing contentedly on the rich grass. The Danish trading post dominates the harbour area, a wooden structure larger than any Icelandic dwelling. Denmark has ruled Iceland for centuries, controlling all trade and keeping the island's people in a state of near poverty. Icelanders may only trade with Danish merchants who set whatever prices they wish for goods from Europe while paying very little for Icelandic fish, wool and other products. You see a group of men working on the promised rampart around the trading post, piling stones and earth into a defensive wall. A few Danish soldiers watch over the work, their metal breastplates gleaming in the sunlight. You've never seen such armour before. Icelanders don't have armies or weapons beyond simple tools and hunting knives. Your father calls to you. It's time for work. Today you'll be helping him gather eggs from the cliffs on the eastern side of the island. It's dangerous work. You'll be lowered on ropes to reach the nests, but the eggs are a valuable source of food. Be careful, your mother warns, handing you a small basket for the eggs, and be home before evening prayers. You nod and follow your father down the path toward the sea cliffs. The day is bright and clear, the ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Puffins, with their colourful beaks, dart through the air, and the smell of salt and seaweed fills your lungs. As you walk, your father tells stories of the island's history, how it got its name, the Westman Islands, because Irish slaves killed their Norse master and fled here in the early days of Iceland's settlement. The Norse followed and killed the Irish men, the Westmen, giving the islands their name. It's a bloody history for such a peaceful-looking place. At the cliffs, your father secures a rope around your waist and anchors the other end to a sturdy rock. Remember, test each handhold before you put your weight on it, he instructs, and don't disturb the parent birds more than necessary. You nod and begin your careful descent down the weathered rock face. The work is terrifying and exhilarating, hanging above the crashing waves, reaching carefully into nests to collect the speckled eggs while avoiding angry birds. But you've done this many times before. This is life on Haimai. Dangerous but necessary work to feed your family. By midday, your basket is full, and your father pulls you back to safety. You rest on the grass, eating dried fish and drinking water from a skin flask. "There's a ship," your father says suddenly, shading his eyes against the sun. You follow his gaze and see a distant sail on the horizon. "Danish?" you ask. "I don't think so. The sail is wrong." There's concern in his voice. You finish your meal quickly, and your father decides to return to the village earlier than planned. As you walk, more ships appear on the horizon, 3 in total. Unusual for these waters, where typically only Danish merchant vessels and local fishing boats are seen. By the time you reach the village, word has spread. The Danish merchants are calling all islanders to gather at the trading post for protection. People hurry about, some carrying what few valuables they own, others simply shepherding their children. There's fear in every face. Your father leads your family to the trading post where the Danish factor, the merchant in charge, is organising a defence, but it's clear to all that there are few weapons and fewer men who know how to use them. The rampart remains half finished, more symbolic than useful. "They say it's the Turkish pirates," an old woman whispers to your mother, "come to take us all away to heathen lands." Your mother tightens her grip on your sibling's hands and looks to your father for reassurance. He tries to smile, but his eyes betray his fear. The day passes in anxious waiting. The ships remain offshore, just watching. The Danish merchants and soldiers stand at the ready, but as evening falls, the factor announces that the danger must have passed. These must be part of the defensive force promised by the king, he declares. They're likely here to protect us from any Turkish threat. Return to your homes and rest easy. People murmur in relief, gathering their belongings and children. Your family joins the exodus back to your turf house, your father unusually quiet as you walk. "Do you believe they're friendly ships?" you ask him softly. He looks down at you, his face solemn in the evening light. "I pray they are," he answers, "but we should remain vigilant. Tonight we'll sleep with our clothes on, ready to move quickly if needed. At home, your mother prepares a simple supper, and your father reads from his Bible as usual, though his voice lacks its customary strength. The familiar words of the psalm seem to hang in the air. "The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge." Your family sleeps fitfully that night, the summer sky never growing fully dark. Outside, the sea laps against the shore, and somewhere offshore, 3 mysterious ships wait. The air feels heavy with anticipation, as if the island itself is holding its breath. What you don't know, what no one on Jaime knows, is that with the morning will come a terror unlike anything the island has ever seen. Before another sunset, lives will be forever changed, families torn apart, and the peaceful rhythm of island life shattered beyond repair. But for now, wrapped in woolen blankets in your family's turf house, listening to your siblings' soft breathing and your mother's occasional murmured prayer, there is still peace. Tomorrow remains unknown, and tonight sleep eventually comes, uneasy but merciful in its temporary escape from fear. The midnight sun casts long shadows across the island, and the sea whispers secrets to the shore. In houses throughout Jaime, families sleep, unaware that this is their last night of freedom. The ships wait, dark silhouettes against the horizon, harbingers of the storm about to break upon this peaceful shore. The morning dawns bright and clear. You wake to the sound of birds and the gentle murmur of your mother's voice as she hums an old Icelandic hymn while preparing breakfast. The worry from yesterday seems less pressing in the golden light of a new day. The mysterious ships remain anchored offshore, but they've made no threatening moves during the night. Your father has already gone to check on his parishioners, promising to return soon with news. Your mother instructs you to help your siblings dress, while she kneads dough for the day's bread. "The baby is restless today," she says, placing a hand on her swollen belly, like a fish trying to swim upstream. She smiles, but there's a tightness around her eyes that betrays her lingering concern. Through the small window, you can see people moving about the village, resuming their daily tasks. The Danish merchants have opened their storehouse, and women are gathering to trade dried fish and woolen goods. Life seems to be returning to normal despite the presence of the unfamiliar ships. Suddenly, shouts rise from the harbour. You rush to the door and peer outside. People are pointing toward the sea, but not at the ships anchored offshore. Something new is happening. Your mother joins you, shading her eyes against the morning sun. "What is it?" she asks. "Boats," you say, watching as 3 large rowboats detach from the mysterious ships and head toward the island. But they're not approaching the harbour. Instead, they're making for a rocky stretch of shoreline to the south, a place locals call Reningjatangi, or Robber's Point, though no one can remember how it got that name until today. "Get your siblings," your mother says, her voice suddenly firm. "We need to find your father." But before you can gather the little ones, your father appears, running up the path to your house, his face pale and his breath coming in gasps. They're landing at Reningjatangi, he pants. The Danish factor says they're pirates, Barbary corsairs from North Africa. We must hide immediately. Your mother gasps, one hand over her mouth, the other protectively covering her belly. But where? The turf house offers no protection. The caves, your father says decisively. Many are already heading there. Quickly now, take only what we can carry easily. In a flurry of activity, your mother wraps bread and dried fish in cloths, while you help the little ones into their warmest clothes. Your father grabs his Bible and a small pouch containing the family's few coins and valuables. Ready? He asks, looking at each of you in turn. You nod, though your heart is pounding so hard you think it might burst from your chest. Your little sister is crying softly, sensing the fear but not understanding its cause. Your older brother stands straight and tries to look brave, but his hands tremble at his sides. Outside, the village is in chaos. People run in all directions, some toward the inland hills, others toward the small boats pulled up on the shore, hoping to row to the mainland. The Danish merchants and soldiers have already retreated behind their rampart, closing the heavy wooden gate against anyone seeking refuge. Your father leads your family toward a path that winds up the hillside toward a series of caves known to the islanders as emergency shelters during storms. Others are headed the same way, carrying children and whatever possessions they could grab in haste. You look back over your shoulder and see the first of the pirates reaching the shore. Even from this distance, they're terrifying, wild-looking men with curved swords and strange clothing. They leap from their boats and immediately begin running toward the village, spreading out like hunting wolves. Don't look back, your father urges, taking your hand. Just keep moving. The path grows steeper, and your mother struggles with her pregnancy. Your father supports her with one arm while carrying your toddler brother with the other. You hold your sister's hand tightly, pulling her along when she wants to stop and rest. Almost there, your father encourages as the first dark openings of the caves come into view. Several families have already reached them, disappearing into the shadowy safety of the earth. But then you hear shouts behind you, closer than they should be. Somehow, the pirates have discovered the escape route. They're coming up the path, moving faster than your family can with a pregnant mother and small children. Go ahead, your father says urgently, handing the toddler to you. Take them into the cave, I'll help your mother. You hesitate, not wanting to leave them behind, but there's no time to argue. You grab your siblings and hurry towards the nearest cave, joining several other frightened villagers inside its cool darkness. From the cave mouth, you watch in horror as 3 pirates reach your parents before they can make it to safety. Your father steps in front of your mother, his hands raised in a gesture that might be surrender or protection. He speaks to them, perhaps trying the few words of Danish or English he knows, hoping they might understand. One of the pirates shoves him roughly. Your father stumbles but keeps his footing. He tries again to speak, making the sign of the cross and saying, Jesus, loudly enough for you to hear. The pirate's response is immediate and brutal. He strikes your father with the butt of his spear, sending him sprawling onto the rocky ground. Your mother screams and tries to help him, but another pirate grabs her arms, binding them quickly with a length of rope. Your father rises to his knees, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. The pirates bind him too, then prod both your parents back down the path toward the village. Inside the cave, someone pulls you deeper into the shadows. Be quiet, a woman whispers. If they hear the children, they'll find us all. You hold your siblings close, covering your little sister's mouth when she begins to whimper. Tears stream silently down your face as you watch your parents being led away. For hours you remain hidden, listening to distant shouts and occasional screams from the village below. More pirates climb the path searching for escapees. Some find other caves, dragging out the people hiding inside. Your cave, smaller and better concealed than some, remains undiscovered. As afternoon fades toward evening, an eerie quiet falls over the island. The woman who pulled you deeper into the cave, Margaret, the wife of a fisherman, carefully approaches the entrance and peers out. They're gathering everyone at the Danish trading post, she reports. I can see a crowd there, guarded by the pirates. They're loading people onto their boats. My parents will be among them, you say, your voice strange and hollow to your own ears. Margaret looks at you with pity. I fear so. Many have been taken. What happens now? Your brother asks, his young face streaked with dirt and tears. We wait, Margaret answers. Wait until we're certain they've gone, then we'll try to reach the mainland to seek help. Night falls, the summer sky dimming to a deep blue but never growing truly dark. Your siblings eventually fall into exhausted sleep, but you remain awake, staring out at the harbour where lantern light reveals the pirate ship still anchored offshore. In the early hours of the morning, a terrible sight greets your watchful eyes. The Landekirkje church, where your father has preached for years, erupts in flames. The wooden structure burns quickly, sending sparks spiralling into the night sky. Even from the cave, you can hear the crash as the small steeple collapses. They're destroying everything, you whisper. Not everything, Margaret says grimly. They're taking the most valuable things with them, our people. When dawn breaks on the second day, you see the pirate ships raising their sails. The 3 smaller boats make their final trips between shore and ships, carrying the last of their captives and plunder. They're leaving, Margaret announces to the small group in the cave. We should wait a bit longer to be certain, then go down to see what's left. By mid-morning, the ships have disappeared over the horizon, and the survivors cautiously emerge from their hiding places. You carry your toddler brother, while your older siblings follow close behind, all of you clinging together like shipwreck survivors to floating debris. The village is a scene of devastation. Many houses have been ransacked, doors hanging from broken hinges, possessions scattered across the ground. The church is a blackened skeleton, still smouldering in places. The Danish trading post stands intact behind its rampart, but when you approach, you find it deserted. The merchants and soldiers fled in their own boat during the first moments of the attack. Other survivors wander the village in shock, calling out names of missing loved ones. An old man sits in the ashes of his home, weeping openly. A woman cradles a dead man in her arms, one of those who resisted the pirates and paid with his life. 4 men who had hidden successfully approach your group. We saw everything, one says, his voice tight with anger and grief. The pirates divided into 3 groups. The largest attacked the trading post, while the others spread through the village, taking everyone they could find. The Danes? Someone asks. Fled before the pirates landed, another man spits. Left us to face them alone. How many taken? Margaret asks. The man shakes his head grimly. More than 200. Men, women, children. Anyone who couldn't escape or hide, and they killed perhaps 30 who fought back or tried to run. The reality sinks in slowly, like cold water seeping into your clothes. Your parents are gone, taken across the sea to an unimaginable fate. Your pregnant mother, your gentle father, now prisoners of men who see them only as valuable merchandise. What do we do now? You ask, your voice small. Margaret puts an arm around your shoulders. We survive, she says firmly. We take care of each other and find a way to send word to the mainland. Perhaps, she hesitates, not wanting to give false hope. Perhaps there will be a way to bring some of them home again. The days that follow pass in a blur of grief and desperate activity. The remaining islanders work together to salvage what food remains and repair damaged homes. 4 fishing boats that were hidden in remote coves during the attack become precious resources used to catch food and eventually to send messengers to the mainland with news of the disaster. You and your siblings move into Margaret's home, as yours was badly damaged during the raid. Her husband was taken, so she welcomes the company and the help with daily tasks. You become surrogate parent to your younger siblings, trying to explain where your mother and father have gone, though you barely understand it yourself. 2 weeks after the attack, a Danish ship finally arrives with soldiers and supplies. The captain listens to accounts of the raid, writing everything in a leather-bound book. He promises that word will be sent to Copenhagen, that perhaps a ransom might be arranged for the captives. The king will not abandon his subjects, he assures the gathered survivors, though few believe him after the Danish merchant's cowardly flight. That night you sit with your siblings on the cliff edge, looking out over the sea that took your parents away, the same sea that might someday bring them home again. Do you think they're still alive? Your brother asks quietly. Yes, you answer, with more certainty than you feel. Father is clever and strong. He'll find a way to protect Mother and himself. But where are they taking them? Your sister asks. You hesitate, not wanting to frighten them with the little you know about the fate of captives taken by Barbary pirates. To a place far away, you say finally. A place called Algiers, across the sea in Africa. Is it hot there? Your brother wonders. Very hot, I think. And very different from Iceland. Your little sister leans against you, her small body warm against yours. Will they come home? You stroke her hair, watching the endless waves rolling toward the shore. I hope so, you whisper. I pray so. What you cannot know as you sit on that cliff edge with your orphaned siblings is that your father is already planning the most remarkable journey of his life, one that will indeed bring him back to Iceland, though not in the way anyone might expect. Meanwhile, on a pirate ship far out in the Atlantic, your mother and father are huddled with other captives in the crowded hold. Your mother's labour has begun earlier than expected, brought on by the terror and hardship of their capture. Your father holds her hand as she struggles to bring new life into the world in the darkest of circumstances. Above them, on deck, the pirate captain plots a course for Algiers, unaware that among his human cargo is a man whose determination to see his family again will drive him across half of Europe and into legend. As night falls on Haimai, you lead your tired siblings back to Margaret's house, carrying the weight of your new responsibilities with as much courage as you can muster. The island slowly heals around you, though it will never be the same. Nearly half its population is gone, leaving a wound that can never fully close. In the weeks and months to come, you will learn to fish and hunt birds' eggs on your own. You will teach your brother to mend nets and your sister to card wool. You will tell them stories of your parents each night before sleep, keeping their memory alive while hoping against hope that they might somehow return. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between tasks, you will climb back to that cliff edge and look out over the vast ocean, wondering what strange shores your parents now walk upon, and whether they too gaze across the water, dreaming of home. Far out on the rolling Atlantic, the three pirate ships make their way southeast, back toward the distant shores of North Africa. The summer sky stretches endlessly above, stars visible even through the short northern night. Below deck, in the cramped and stuffy hold of the largest ship, your mother lies on a bed of straw, her face drawn with pain and exhaustion. Your father kneels beside her, whispering words of comfort and prayer as her labour continues hour after hour. The captives around them do what little they can to help, offering scraps of cloth, small sips of water, creating a circle of protection around the labouring woman. These are their neighbours and friends from Jaime, now bound together by shared misfortune. "It's too soon," your mother whispers, tears streaming down her face. "The baby isn't due for weeks yet." "God watches over us, even here," your father assures her, though doubt shadows his eyes. He has seen birth before, has comforted many parish families through difficult deliveries, but never like this, never on the heaving deck of a pirate ship far from home and help. Through the night, your mother's pain increases. The other women captives take turns supporting her, wiping her brow, sharing what little knowledge of childbirth they possess. Your father prays without ceasing, his voice a constant murmur beneath the groans of the ship and the occasional shouts of pirates above. As dawn breaks across the eastern horizon, a new sound joins the symphony of the ship, the thin, reedy cry of a newborn. Your mother lies back, exhausted but smiling weakly, as one of the women places a tiny, red-faced infant on her chest. "A boy," the woman says, her own face alight with wonder despite their dire circumstances. a healthy boy. Your father weeps openly, touching the baby's tiny hand with a trembling finger. "Praise be to God," he whispers. Word of the birth spreads quickly through the hold and soon reaches the deck above. To everyone's surprise, 2 pirates appear at the hatch carrying old shirts. They push through the crowd of captives to see the baby, their faces showing curiosity rather than malice. "For the child," one says in broken Danish, holding out the shirts. Your father accepts them cautiously, nodding his thanks. The pirates leave, and your mother looks up at your father with a question in her eyes. "What shall we name him?" she asks. "This child born between worlds?" Your father thinks for a moment, then says, "John, after our good Reverend who died defending his flock." He speaks of Reverend John, who was killed on the shore during the first moments of the raid when he tried to reason with the pirates. The other captives murmur approval, and so your new brother receives his name, Jon Olafsson, born on the boundless sea, neither in Iceland nor in Africa, but in the vast in-between. Days pass, melting one into another as the ships continue their southward journey. The heat grows more intense as they leave northern waters behind. The captives suffer in the airless hold, given barely enough food and water to survive. Some of the elderly become ill, their strength sapped by the conditions and the heartbreak of captivity. Your little brother, against all odds, thrives. Your mother's milk flows despite her own hunger and thirst, and the baby grows stronger each day. The pirates continue to show a surprising interest in him, sometimes bringing extra food for your mother, for the milk, they explain with gestures when language fails. "They are men, after all," your father observes quietly, "not devils, though they do the devil's work." By the time a month has passed, the ships have traversed the entire length of the Atlantic Ocean, sailing around the Iberian Peninsula and into the warmer waters of the Mediterranean. The captives are allowed on deck more often now, perhaps because the pirates know there is nowhere to escape to, or perhaps out of some small mercy as the hold grows ever hotter and more fetid. Standing on the deck, your parents get their first glimpse of the North African coast, a ribbon of golden sand backed by distant mountains shimmering in the intense heat. The sight brings no joy, only the dread of what awaits them in this alien land. "Algiers," one of the pirates tells your father, pointing toward a white city that appears on the horizon. The word means nothing to the Icelanders, but they will soon learn to both fear and know it well. The harbour comes into view, a forest of masts from dozens of ships surrounded by white buildings climbing up hillsides topped with strange dome-shaped structures and tall, slender towers. Nothing in this landscape resembles the green cliffs and turf houses of home. Even the light is different, harsh and white rather than the soft golden glow of Iceland's summer sun. As the ships drop anchor in the deep water of the harbour, small boats approach to ferry the captives to shore. Your parents, with baby John wrapped tightly against your mother's chest, are among the first group taken. Your father helps your mother climb carefully down into the waiting boat, then follows himself. The African sun beats down mercilessly as they're rowed toward the shore. Your mother shields the baby with a piece of cloth, worried about the heat that feels so intense it might burn his delicate skin. Your father squints against the blinding glare, trying to comprehend the alien world they're approaching. When they reach the shore, they're herded quickly up stone steps to a wide plaza. The captives gather there, surrounded by armed guards who shout in a language none of them understand. The plaza teems with people of all descriptions. Men in flowing robes and turbans, others in European dress, women with veiled faces, children darting between adults with the universal energy of youth. "So many people," your mother whispers, clutching the baby tighter. She has never seen such a crowd. The entire population of Jaime would be lost in this multitude. Your father nods, his eyes constantly moving, taking in everything. "Look there," he says quietly, pointing discreetly. "Those men in European clothes, I think they might be Christians." Before they can consider approaching these potential allies, the guards begin separating the captives into groups. Men are pulled away from women and children, families torn apart with no regard for their pleas. Your father resists when they try to take him from your mother, and receives a brutal blow for his trouble. He staggers but remains standing, watching helplessly as your mother is led away with other women and small children. "Be strong," he calls to her. "God is with us, even here." She looks back, tears streaming down her face, the baby clutched to her chest. Then she disappears into the crowd. Your father and the other men are marched through narrow streets to a large building with high walls. Inside is a courtyard where they're ordered to sit on the ground. Guards walk among them, examining them like livestock, making notes on parchment. A man in rich robes approaches, clearly someone of importance. The guards bow to him, and he walks slowly around the group of captives, his eyes calculating. This, your father later learns, is the Dey of Algiers, the ruler of this corsair state that exists under the loose authority of the Ottoman Empire. The Dey stops before your father's 11-year-old brother, who sits straight-backed despite his fear. The boy's fair hair and blue eyes mark him as dramatically different from the local population. The Dey speaks to a guard who nods and makes a mark next to the boy's name. Your father watches in horror, understanding that his son has been selected for some special purpose. He tries to speak, to plead, but a guard silences him with a threatening gesture. When the Dey has finished his selection, taking every 8th captive for his personal property, the remaining Icelanders are led to another courtyard. Here, to their shock and dismay, they are put on display like goods in a market. Local people walk around them, examining their teeth, feeling their muscles, discussing them in a language they don't understand. "They're selling us," mutters Gardar, a fisherman from Haimai who stands next to your father, like horses at a market day. Your father can only nod, too stunned to speak. This is the reality they've heard whispered about. Christian captives sold into slavery in Muslim lands, but to experience it firsthand is beyond comprehension. One by one, the Icelanders are purchased. Some are taken away immediately by their new owners, while others remain waiting. Your father finds himself bought by a man who owns 3 others from East Iceland, taken in an earlier raid on the eastern fjords. Through them he learns that his new master is a shipbuilder who needs strong men to carry and shape timber. "You're fortunate," one of the Icelanders tells him. "He's not cruel, as some masters are. If you work hard and cause no trouble, he'll feed you well enough and not beat you without reason." "And my wife, my children, how will I find them?" your father asks desperately. The man shakes his head sadly. "It's nearly impossible. They could be anywhere in the city or taken to other towns entirely. Some women become house servants, others are sent to work in fields outside the city." Your father's heart sinks, but he clings to hope. "I must find them. Somehow, I must." His first days in Algiers are a brutal education in his new reality. He's taken to his master's shipyard near the harbour, where he's put to work immediately carrying heavy timbers from storage to the area where ships are built or repaired. The work is exhausting, made worse by the intense heat to which Icelanders are completely unaccustomed. At night, he sleeps on a thin mat in a room with several other slaves, both Icelanders and men from other European nations, Spanish, Italian, even English. Through them, he begins to learn a few words of the local language and more about the society in which he now finds himself. "Algiers lives by the corsair trade," explains an Italian named Marco, who has been a captive for 3 years. "The city's wealth comes from what the pirates bring back. Goods, ships, and people like us. The Dey takes his share, the ship captains take theirs, and the rest is sold in the markets." "How many Christians are held here?" your father asks. Marco shrugs. "Thousands. Some have been here for decades. Others manage to be ransomed if they're from wealthy families or countries that negotiate well for their return." "Ransom," your father repeats, seizing on the word. "Is that possible for all of us?" "Possible, yes. Likely." Marco makes a sceptical face. It depends on whether your country values you enough to pay. Where did you say you're from? Iceland, your father answers. The Italian looks blank. I do not know this place. Is it rich? Does it have a strong king? Your father thinks of his poor island home, ruled distantly by Denmark. No, he admits quietly. It is neither rich nor powerful. Marco pats his shoulder sympathetically. Then you must resign yourself, friend. This is your home now. But your father cannot, will not, accept such a fate. Each day as he works, he prays and plans. He learns that some slaves are permitted to write letters home if their masters allow it. So he begins to curry favour with his owner, working especially hard and learning quickly. He also asks everyone he meets about a woman with a newborn baby recently arrived from the north. Most ignore his questions, but occasionally someone offers a scrap of information, a rumour of Icelandic women purchased by a wealthy merchant or children taken into the day's own household. Weeks pass and your father begins to lose hope of finding your mother and the baby. Then one day, as he's carrying a load of timber through the market, he spots a familiar face, Thorda, a man from Heimaey who was taken in the same raid. Thorda, he calls out, nearly dropping his load in his excitement. The man turns, his face lighting with recognition. They embrace quickly, mindful of the guards who watch the slaves in the market. How are you faring? Your father asks hurriedly. Have you seen any of our people? My wife? The children? Your wife lives, Thorda says, his voice low. I saw her 3 days ago carrying water to a house near the upper city. She had the baby with her and he looked well. Your father's knees nearly buckle with relief. Thank God, he whispers. And my older son, have you heard anything of him? Thorda's face grows serious. He was taken to the Day's palace with the other children he selected. I've heard, he hesitates. Tell me, your father insists. I've heard they're being raised as Muslims, to serve in the Day's household or his army when they're older. The news strikes your father like a physical blow. No, he murmurs. He's a good Christian boy. He would never forsake his faith. Thorda looks away. Children adapt, my friend. It's how they survive. Before they can speak further, a guard approaches and Thorda quickly moves away. Your father returns to his work, his mind racing with this new information. His family lives. That's the most important thing. Somehow he must find a way to reach them, to bring them all together again, to return them to Iceland and their faith. 2 months have passed since the raid on Heimaey, when your father is summoned from his work one morning. His master leads him not to the shipyard, but to a large house near the centre of the city. There, to his astonishment, he's brought before a group of well-dressed men, one of whom speaks Danish. You are the Lutheran minister from the island, yes? The man asks. Your father nods, stunned to be addressed in a language he understands. I am Olafur Egilson, minister of Landakirkja on Heimaey. The men converse among themselves. Then the Danish speaker turns back to him. The Day has decided that someone must go to your country to arrange ransom for the Icelandic captives. As a man of God, you have been chosen for this task. Your father can hardly believe what he's hearing. I would be permitted to return to Iceland? Not just Iceland. You must go to Copenhagen to speak with the Danish king who rules your country. You will carry letters explaining the terms for ransom of your people. Hope surges through your father, but immediately collides with concern. My wife and children, they remain here. The man nods. Of course, they ensure your return with the ransom. He smiles thinly. Or at least your good faith effort to secure it. Your father's mind works quickly. This is both opportunity and torment, a chance for freedom, but at the cost of leaving his family behind in captivity. When would I leave? He asks. Within the week. You'll travel on an Italian merchant ship bound for Livorno. From there, you must make your own way north. May I see my wife and children before I go? The man considers this, then nods. It can be arranged briefly. Your wife is in the household of Haji Mustafa, not far from here. Your baby son is with her. The older boy remains in the Dey's palace and cannot be visited. Your father clenches his jaw against the pain of this last statement, but nods his acceptance. The chance to see your mother and the baby, and the opportunity to seek help for all the captives, outweighs his disappointment. 2 days later, your father is escorted to a large house with a central courtyard filled with orange trees, a luxury unimaginable in Iceland. Your mother is brought out to him, the baby in her arms. She's dressed in loose clothing, unlike anything she would wear at home, her head covered with a scarf. She looks thinner but otherwise healthy, and baby John has grown remarkably, his cheeks plump despite the circumstances. They're permitted only 10 minutes together, closely watched by guards. Your mother weeps when she learns that your father will be leaving. "How will we survive without you?" she asks, her voice breaking. "You must be strong," he tells her, gently touching the baby's cheek. "I will find a way to bring you home. I swear it before God." She nods, trying to compose herself. "And our older children? Have you heard anything of them?" Your father can't bring himself to tell her that your brother has been taken to be raised as a Muslim. Instead, he says, "They're being well cared for. I'll bring them home too, with God's help." All too soon, the guards indicate that their time is up. Your father embraces your mother one last time, kisses the baby's forehead, and watches as they're led back into the house. He doesn't know if he'll ever see them again, but he clings to hope and faith. The following day, your father is taken to the harbour and placed aboard an Italian merchant ship. Before boarding, he's given a document written in multiple languages, a safe conduct pass explaining that he's travelling to arrange ransom and should not be molested by any corsair ships he might encounter. As the ship raises its anchor and catches the wind, your father stands at the rail, watching the white city of Algiers recede into the distance. Somewhere in that alien maze of buildings, your mother, brothers, and dozens of other Icelanders remain captive, their fates uncertain. The Reverend Olafur Egilson, your father, has begun the most extraordinary journey of his life, one that will take him across the Mediterranean, through Italy, Germany, and Denmark, and eventually back to the shores of Iceland. It's a journey few could imagine undertaking even by choice, let alone as a middle-aged man thrust suddenly into it by catastrophe. As the North African coast disappears below the horizon, your father turns his face northward. The journey ahead is long and fraught with danger, but he is sustained by faith and by the memory of your mother's face, the touch of baby John's soft cheek, and the knowledge that somewhere on Heimaey, you and your siblings wait for news of your parents' fate. The ship sails on through the blue Mediterranean waters, carrying your father toward an uncertain future. Behind him in Algiers, your mother puts baby John to sleep, singing softly an Icelandic lullaby that sounds strange and beautiful in this foreign place. And far away on Heimaey, you look up from mending a fishing net and gaze out to sea, wondering where your parents are and if you'll ever see them again. The story of the Turkish raid on Iceland has only begun to unfold, its consequences rippling outward like waves from a stone cast into still water, for the captives in Algiers, for the survivors on Heimaey, and for your father beginning his improbable journey home. Life has been forever altered by the events of those summer days in 1627. But even in the darkest moments, there remains a glimmer of hope. A stubborn belief that families torn apart might somehow find their way back together, that distance and difference might be overcome, that faith might sustain the human spirit through even the most terrible trials. As the stars appear in the Mediterranean sky, different yet familiar constellations to those seen in Iceland, your father whispers a prayer for all those he's left behind. The ship creaks and sways beneath him, carrying him onward toward whatever awaits in the lands to the north. The Italian merchant ship bearing your father away from North Africa moves steadily northward across the Mediterranean. The sailors treat him with a mixture of curiosity and respect. A Lutheran minister from the distant island of Iceland is a novelty even in these waters that have seen travellers from all corners of the known world. During the journey, your father spends long hours gazing at the sea, his mind filled with memories of your mother's face, the weight of baby John in his arms, and the thought of you and your siblings waiting on Heimae, unaware of his journey. The burden of responsibility is almost crushing. The lives of over 200 Icelanders now depend on his ability to traverse half of Europe and secure a ransom that seems impossibly large. At night, in the small space he's been allocated below deck, he carefully reads and rereads the documents he carries. The safe conduct pass is written in several languages: Turkish, Arabic, Italian, Spanish and French, none of which he can read fluently. But the day's seal is unmistakable, a swirling mark in dark ink that represents his only protection should they encounter corsair ships. The other document is the ransom demand, a carefully itemised list of the Icelandic captives and the price required for each, with details of how payment should be arranged. The total sum is staggering, far beyond what Iceland's poor economy could possibly produce. After 2 weeks at sea, the ship reaches the port of Livorno on Italy's western coast. Your father steps onto European soil with profound relief, kneeling to kiss the ground and offer a prayer of thanksgiving. Yet this is only the beginning of his journey. He still must cross the Alps, traverse the German states, and reach Denmark before he can even begin to plead his case for the Icelandic captives. In Livorno, he seeks out the Danish consul, hoping for assistance. The man receives him with surprise. Few Danish subjects ever appear at his doorstep, least of all Lutheran ministers from Iceland, with tales of Barbary pirate raids. But after examining your father's documents, the consul provides him with a small sum of money and a letter of introduction to contacts farther north. The journey will not be easy, the consul warns. Europe is still troubled by the aftermath of war and religious strife. Travel cautiously and speak carefully, especially when you cross into the German states. Your father nods gratefully, tucking the money and letter into the small bundle that contains his only possessions: a change of clothes, his precious Bible, and the documents from Algiers. "How long to Copenhagen, do you think?" he asks. The consul considers. "If all goes well, perhaps 2 months. But there are many things that might delay you: weather, illness, bandits, and winter approaches." 2 months seems an eternity when your father thinks of your mother and brothers waiting in captivity, but he has no choice. The next morning, he joins a merchant caravan heading north toward Florence and begins the long journey across the Italian peninsula. The Italy through which your father travels is a patchwork of city-states and territories, each with its own rulers, customs, and dangers. He witnesses poverty and splendour side by side, crumbling villages where thin-faced children watch him pass, and magnificent cities where marble palaces and churches rise in testimony to wealth and faith. In Florence, he's granted an audience with a cardinal who listens to his story with great interest. The Catholic Church has long experience with ransoming Christian captives from North Africa, maintaining special religious orders dedicated to this purpose. "Your situation is unfortunately not unique," the cardinal tells him. "Thousands of Christians languish in captivity across Barbary, but your case is complicated by your Lutheran faith." Your father straightens his shoulders. "Christian charity recognizes no such divisions," he says boldly. The cardinal smiles slightly. "Perhaps not in heaven, but here on earth the divisions remain significant." Nevertheless, he provides your father with another letter of introduction and a small donation toward the ransom fund. From Florence, your father continues northward, crossing the Po Valley and approaching the formidable barrier of the Alps. The mountains rise before him like nothing he's ever seen. Iceland has its highlands and volcanoes, but nothing to compare with these towering peaks that seem to scrape the very sky. The caravan he's joined takes the Brenner Pass, a well-travelled route that connects Italy with the German lands beyond. As they climb higher, the air grows colder, reminding your father of Iceland's climate. But the terrain is treacherous in ways his homeland is not. Steep, winding paths that skirt bottomless drops, areas prone to avalanches, regions where bandits prey on travellers. Crossing the Alps takes nearly 2 weeks of difficult travel. One night, huddled around a small fire in a mountain shelter, your father takes out his Bible and reads aloud to his travelling companions. Though few understand his Danish-tinged Latin, there's comfort in the familiar words for all of them. "You are far from home," observes an Italian merchant who speaks a little Danish from his trading voyages. "My body is far from home," your father agrees, "but my spirit remains with my family, those in Iceland and those in captivity." The merchant nods thoughtfully. "I have heard stories of these Barbary captives. Some remain slaves for many years, others convert to Islam to improve their circumstances." Your father's jaw tightens. "My people will remain true to their faith," he says firmly, though in his heart he fears for your brother, taken into the day's household to be raised as a Muslim. Finally, they descend from the mountains into the southern German territories. Here, your father must navigate a complex political landscape still recovering from decades of religious warfare. As a Lutheran minister, he finds more sympathy for his cause in Protestant territories, while in Catholic regions he must tread carefully, presenting himself simply as a Christian seeking help for captive countrymen. The journey through Germany is slow and often discouraging. Winter has arrived in earnest, bringing snow and bitter cold that make travel increasingly difficult. Your father falls ill for a time, burning with fever in a small inn while precious days slip away. He dreams of Iceland during his illness, of green summer fields and the midnight sun, of turf houses warm with family gathered inside, of the church where he preached for so many years. When he recovers, he pushes northward with renewed determination, though his body is weakened. Each day brings him closer to Denmark, where he hopes to find a more receptive audience for his plea. The Danish king, after all, is the sovereign ruler of Iceland. Surely he will not abandon his subjects to slavery in Africa. By early spring of 1628, nearly 6 months after leaving Algiers, your father finally reaches Copenhagen. The city is larger and more imposing than he imagined, its harbour crowded with ships, its streets bustling with commerce and activity. After the rural simplicity of Iceland and the arduous journey through southern Europe, the Danish capital feels overwhelming. He finds lodging in a modest inn and immediately seeks an audience with royal officials who might help his cause. But the Danish court moves slowly, and access to those with real power proves difficult to obtain. For weeks, your father waits, each day visiting offices and antechambers, presenting his documents and explaining his mission to increasingly junior officials. The king is very concerned with the situation, they tell him. The matter is being given the highest consideration. But no concrete action follows these assurances. Your father begins to understand a painful truth. While the raid on Iceland was a catastrophe that tore apart hundreds of families and devastated entire communities, in Copenhagen it's merely one problem among many facing the kingdom. After a particularly discouraging day of unsuccessful petitioning, your father sits in a small church seeking solace in prayer. An elderly clergyman notices him and approaches. "You seem troubled, brother," the man says gently. Your father explains his situation, the words pouring out after months of careful diplomatic speech. He tells of the raid on Jaime, of the captives taken, of his wife and children separated from him, of the seemingly insurmountable task of raising enough money to free them. The clergyman listens intently, then says, "I may be able to help you reach someone who will listen. There is to be a gathering of church officials tomorrow. Come with me, and you shall tell your story." The next day, your father finds himself addressing a room of Danish Lutheran clergy. He speaks with passion and conviction, describing the plight of his people and the urgent need for action. When he finishes, the room is silent for a long moment. Then one man stands. "I believe we must help our Icelandic brethren," he says firmly. "Let us take up a collection immediately and petition the king directly." A ripple of agreement passes through the assembly. For the first time since beginning his journey, your father feels a surge of genuine hope. With the backing of the Danish church, doors begin to open. Your father is granted an audience with high officials close to the king. They listen to his account of the raid and examine the ransom demands with serious attention. "This will require a kingdom-wide effort," one says, finally. Letters must be sent to every church in Denmark and Norway requesting donations. The king himself will contribute from the treasury. Your father bows his head in gratitude. "How long will this take?" he asks, thinking always of those waiting in Algiers. "Such a collection cannot be rushed," he's told. "Perhaps a year, perhaps longer." A year. The words fall heavy on your father's heart. Another year of captivity for your mother, for baby John, for all the others taken from Jaime and the eastern fjords. But what choice does he have? Meanwhile, says another official, you should return to Iceland. Your people there need to know what has happened and what is being done, and you must help organise Iceland's contribution to the ransom, modest though it may be. And so, nearly a year after being torn from his home by Barbary pirates, your father prepares to return to Iceland. A Danish ship bound for Vestmannaeyjar will carry him back to Jaime, where you and your siblings wait, still unaware of his journey or your mother's fate. The voyage is mercifully uneventful, though your father chafes at each delay. Each day the ship sits becalmed or waits for favourable winds. When finally the familiar silhouette of Jaime appears on the horizon, he stands at the bow, scanning the shore for any sign of change. The island looks much as it did before the raid, its green slopes rising from the sea, the small cluster of houses near the harbour. But as the ship draws closer, your father sees that fewer fishing boats bob in the water, fewer columns of smoke rise from hearth fires. The raid has left its mark, even on the physical landscape. When the ship docks, word of your father's return spreads quickly through the small community. People gather at the harbour, their faces showing disbelief and joy. You and your siblings are among them, rushed down from Margaret's house by neighbours as soon as the ship was sighted. You see him standing on the deck, thinner than you remember, his face weathered by sun and wind, his beard now more grey than black. For a moment you can't move, can hardly believe that this is real and not another dream of reunion. Then he's walking down the gangplank, his eyes searching the crowd until they find you. "My children," he says, his voice breaking. He opens his arms and you run to him, your siblings close behind. The embrace is both familiar and strange. This is your father, yet he seems somehow different, changed by experiences you can hardly imagine. You cling to him nonetheless, sobbing with relief and renewed grief. "Mother?" your brother asks, looking up at your father with hope in his eyes. Your father kneels down to be at eye level with his children. "Your mother lives," he says gently. "She is in a city called Algiers, far across the sea. She cares for your baby brother, who was born on the journey there." "A brother?" your sister says wonderingly. "Yes, a strong, healthy boy named John." Your father smiles, though his eyes are sad. "And I am working to bring them home. It may take time, but do not lose hope." That night, your father stays in Margaret's house with you and your siblings. The neighbours crowd in, eager to hear news of their own loved ones taken in the raid. Your father tells them what he can, who he saw in Algiers, what conditions were like, which captives remained healthy and which had fallen ill or died. Some of the news brings comfort, some only fresh grief. But for all of them, there is now at least some knowledge to replace the terrible uncertainty that has haunted them for months. Later, when the neighbours have gone and your siblings sleep, You sit with your father by the hearth fire. "Tell me everything," you say quietly. "I need to know." And so he does, speaking in a low voice so as not to wake the others. He describes the journey to Algiers, the birth of baby John at sea, the slave markets and the separation of families. He tells you of his journey through Europe, the obstacles and occasional kindness he encountered, the slow progress in Copenhagen. "And now?" you ask when he falls silent. "Now I must travel around Iceland, telling our story in every parish, collecting what donations people can spare. The Danish church is doing the same throughout their kingdom. When enough money is gathered, negotiators will be sent to Algiers to arrange the ransom. How long will it take?" Your father sighs, showing for a moment the deep weariness he usually conceals. "I don't know. Years, perhaps. The sum demanded is enormous." You take this in, trying to imagine your mother and baby brother waiting years for freedom. "Will they all come home?" you ask finally. Your father hesitates. "I pray so," he says, "but I must be honest with you. Some may choose to convert to Islam to improve their situation. Others may not survive the conditions or the waiting, and some—" He pauses, thinking of your elder brother taken into the day's household. "Some may become so changed by their experiences that they no longer wish to return." The thought is almost too painful to contemplate. You push it aside and focus on what can be done now. "I want to help," you tell your father. "Whatever needs to be done, I'll do it." He embraces you again, this time with pride mingling with the sadness. You've already done so much, caring for your siblings, keeping hope alive. But yes, there will be work for all of us in the days ahead. In the following weeks, your father begins the task of documenting everything that happened, from the first sighting of the pirate ships to his return to Iceland. He writes in a clear, steady hand, creating a record that will be sent to Copenhagen and may ultimately be published as a warning to other coastal communities and as a call for donations. He calls this document his Reisubok, his travel book. In it, he describes not only the raid and captivity, but also the strange lands and customs he witnessed on his journey. He writes of the white buildings of Algiers climbing up from the blue Mediterranean, of the crowded markets filled with goods from every corner of the world, of the complex society where Christians, Muslims and Jews live side by side in an uneasy arrangement. As spring turns to summer, your father must leave again, this time to travel around Iceland, spreading word of the captives' plight and gathering donations. Before he goes, he takes you and your siblings to the cliff where you've often gone to look out to sea. "Whenever you miss your mother or wonder where she is," he tells you, "come here and look southward. Though many lands and waters lie between, you're gazing in the direction of Algiers and know that she looks northward, thinking of you. It's small comfort, but it's something tangible to hold on to. In the difficult years that follow, you often return to this spot, imagining your mother's eyes turned toward the same stars that shine above Iceland." Your father's journeys around Iceland take him away for months at a time, but whenever he returns to Jaime, he brings stories and occasionally letters that have somehow made their way from Algiers. These precious messages, written by your mother or dictated to someone who can write, become your most valued possessions. "The baby grows strong," one letter says. "He babbles words in both our tongue and the local language. I tell him stories of Iceland and his family waiting there, so he will know who he is and where he belongs." Time passes. A year, then two, then more. The effort to raise ransom money continues, though progress is slow. The Danish kingdom faces other challenges: wars, economic difficulties, political tensions that often push the plight of Icelandic captives to the background. Your father ages visibly under the strain of his constant travels and the burden of responsibility. Yet he never abandons hope, never stops working toward the day when the captives might return. And in Algiers, though you cannot see it, your mother maintains her faith and identity despite the pressures to convert. She teaches baby John the Lord's Prayer in Icelandic, whispered at night when no one can hear. She learns enough of the local language to communicate with her masters and to navigate the bewildering streets on the rare occasions she's allowed outside the household. Sometimes, standing on a rooftop terrace with the baby in her arms, she looks northward across the Mediterranean toward the distant, invisible shores of Europe, and beyond them, the even more distant island of Iceland. Like you, she imagines a connection spanning the vast distance, a thread of love and memory that neither time nor separation can break. The story of the Turkish raid on Iceland and its aftermath is a tapestry still being woven, threads of courage and endurance intertwining with those of loss and change. For all the captives, for all those waiting at home, for your father journeying tirelessly between worlds, life has become a constant negotiation between hope and reality, between holding on and letting go. As another day ends on Heimaey, you stand on your cliff edge, looking southward as you've done so many times before. The sea stretches endlessly before you, its surface catching the last golden light of the setting sun. Somewhere beyond that horizon, your mother rocks your baby brother to sleep with an Icelandic lullaby. And somewhere on the roads of Iceland, your father continues his mission, carrying the stories of the captives to anyone who will listen, gathering coins and prayers, keeping alive the hope of reunion. The evening star appears in the darkening sky, the same star that shines above Algiers. In this, at least, you remain connected, bound by the unchanging constellations that wheel above a world where everything else seems uncertain. Years pass like water flowing to the sea. You grow from child to adolescent to young adult, your life shaped by absence. The raid of 1627 has marked not just your family, but all of Iceland, a wound in the collective memory of a small island nation. On Heimaey, life gradually returned to its rhythm after the initial shock of the raid. The Danish merchants rebuilt their trading post, new families moved into abandoned homes, children who lost parents were taken in by relatives or neighbours. The physical scars healed first. The burned church was reconstructed, damaged houses repaired, fishing boats replaced. But the emotional wounds remained raw, especially for those like you who lived each day with the knowledge that loved ones suffered in captivity far away. Your father's efforts to raise ransom money continued tirelessly. His Resubok was published and distributed throughout Denmark and Norway, bringing attention to the plight of the Icelandic captives. Letters went out to churches across northern Europe, appealing for donations to the ransom fund. Every coin collected was dutifully recorded and added to the growing sum. But progress was agonizingly slow. Iceland's economy, poor in the best of times, had been further weakened by the loss of so many productive adults. Denmark, distracted by involvement in the 30 Years' War raging across Europe, could spare little from its treasury. Despite your father's passionate advocacy, the full ransom amount seemed perpetually out of reach. Meanwhile, letters continued to arrive sporadically from Algiers, brought by merchant ships or diplomatic envoys. Your mother's messages grew fewer and shorter over the years. Paper and writing materials were precious luxuries for a slave, but each one was a treasure confirming she and your baby brother still lived. John speaks well now, one letter reported, in both our tongue and Arabic. He asks about his father and siblings in the northern land. I tell him stories of snow and green summer hills, though he has never seen either. Another letter, received 6 years after the raid, contained more troubling news. Some of our people have taken the Muslim faith, seeing no hope of rescue. I cannot blame them, for their conditions improve greatly when they convert, but I hold fast to our Lord Jesus and teach John the prayers of our homeland in secret. Your father read these letters with a mixture of joy and sorrow. Joy that your mother and brother lived, sorrow at the thought of their continuing captivity and the pressure to abandon their faith. The letters never mentioned your older brother, taken into the day's household, and your father could only pray that he too survived and remembered his origins. For nearly 9 years, this pattern continued, waiting, hoping, collecting coins and prayers toward an ever-distant goal. You reached adulthood in this state of suspension, your childhood defined by absence and longing. The cliff edge where you looked southward toward invisible Algiers became less a place of active hope and more a spot for quiet remembrance. Then, in the summer of 1636, astonishing news arrived on Jaime. A Danish ship anchored in the harbour, and from it disembarked a group of haggard, sunburned people who moved with the uncertainty of strangers, yet called out in Icelandic as they came ashore. "The captives!" someone shouted, and the word spread through the village like fire. "The captives have returned." You ran to the harbour with everyone else, scanning the faces for your mother or brothers. Most of the returnees were men, former fishermen and farmers, their bodies lean and hardened by years of manual labour under the North African sun. There were a few women as well, their faces partially hidden by scarves worn in the Muslim fashion, a habit too ingrained after years in Algiers to simply discard. One of these women gasped when she saw your father pushing through the crowd. "Reverend Oliver," she called, her voice thick with emotion. Your father turned, staring in disbelief. "Gudridur, Gudridur Simonadottir," the woman nodded, tears streaming down her weathered face. She had been a widow in her 20s when the pirates came, taken with her young son. Now she stood on Icelandic soil again, but alone. "My son," she explained quietly when your father embraced her and asked after the boy. "He took ill on the journey and died before we reached Copenhagen. I buried him in Danish soil." Her voice broke, but she composed herself with visible effort. "But I bring news of your wife and sons." Your father's breath caught. "They live?" "Your wife lives and keeps her faith," Gudridur confirmed. "Though the years have not been kind to her health, baby John is no longer a baby. He's a strong boy who speaks Icelandic well, for your wife has been diligent in teaching him. They were not among those ransomed this time, but perhaps in the next group." "And my older son?" your father asked, his voice barely audible. Gudridur's eyes filled with compassion. "He lives, but..." She hesitated. "He was raised in the Day's household, educated as a Muslim. He's called Ibrahim now and serves as a translator. He remembers his origins but has embraced his new life. I'm sorry, Reverend." Your father closed his eyes briefly, absorbing this confirmation of his long-held fears. When he opened them again, his gaze found you in the crowd, and you saw both heartbreak and resolve in his face. Later, after the returnees had been settled in homes around the village, your father gathered you and your siblings to share what he had learned. "Only 34 captives were ransomed in this first group," he explained. 6 died on the journey home, and 1 remained in Glückstadt. The ransom fund wasn't sufficient for more, though negotiations continue for another release. "Why wasn't Mother chosen?" your sister asked, her voice small. Your father sighed. "The negotiators had to make difficult decisions. They prioritized skilled workers who could help rebuild Iceland's economy and those with the best chance of surviving the journey. Your mother's health has suffered, and they felt the risk was too great. But there will be another ransom effort. We must continue our work." "And our brothers?" you asked, thinking of the baby born at sea and the 11-year-old taken to the Day's palace. "John remains with your mother. He's 9 years old now, healthy and strong by all accounts. As for your older brother," your father's voice faltered slightly, "we must accept that his path has diverged from ours. After so many years in the Muslim faith, raised in the Day's household, he has become someone new. We can pray for him, but we must also respect that his life has taken a different course. The news was both better and worse than you had feared over the years. Your mother and youngest brother lived and might yet return, but your older brother was lost to a world and faith so different from your own that reconciliation seemed impossible. In the weeks that followed, you spent many hours with Gudrida and the other returned captives, listening to their stories of life in Algiers. They spoke of brilliant white buildings rising along blue waters, of markets filled with goods from every corner of the world, of gardens with orange trees and flowers that bloomed year-round. They described the call to prayer that sounded 5 times daily from the minarets, the complex social hierarchies, the varying treatments they received from different masters. Gudrida, more educated than most, had worked as a domestic servant in a wealthy household where she was treated relatively well. Others had endured harsher conditions, hard labour in fields or construction, abuse and mistreatment, pressure to convert to Islam. Some who converted did so sincerely, finding truth in that faith, she told you one evening as you walked along the cliffs. Others did it merely to improve their circumstances. Either way, they could never return here. The Danish church would not permit Muslims to settle in territories under its authority. And those who kept their Christian faith, you asked? They suffered more, generally speaking, but they also maintained a stronger sense of identity and connection to home. Your mother was one of these, a pillar for the other captives, always reminding them of who they were and where they came from. The returned captives found reintegration difficult in many ways. They had been changed by their experiences. Their speech was peppered with Arabic words, their habits and tastes altered by years in a different culture. Some found they no longer fit comfortably into Icelandic society, feeling like strangers in what should have been home. Gudrida particularly struggled to readjust. Too educated now for her former place in society, she eventually moved to Copenhagen for a time before returning to Iceland. There, to everyone's surprise, she married a young theological student named Hallgrímur Pétursson, who had been sent to teach the returned captives and help them readjust to Christian society. Life continued its flow, the currents of time carrying everyone forward. Another 9 years passed, bringing you to the cusp of middle age. Your siblings had married and started families of their own. Your father, now an old man with a snow-white beard, continued his ministry on Haimai, though his body was bent with age and the burden of his long mission. In 1645, astounding news arrived once again. A second ransom had been paid, and 8 more Icelandic captives had reached Copenhagen. Among them, you learned with a surge of emotions too complex to name, were your mother and brother John. Your father, despite his age and frailty, insisted on travelling to Copenhagen immediately. You accompanied him, unwilling to let him make the difficult journey alone. The voyage was hard on his weakened body, but determination sustained him. As your ship entered Copenhagen's harbour, he stood at the rail, scanning the docks with eyes dimmed by age but brightened by hope. The reunion, when it finally came, was both joyous and painful. Your mother, once a strong, handsome woman in her prime, was now thin and stooped, her face deeply lined, her hands gnarled from years of hard labour. 18 years of captivity had taken their toll. Beside her stood a young man of 19, your brother John, born on the pirate ship, raised in Algiers, a stranger who shared your blood. Your father embraced them both, tears streaming unashamedly down his lined face. You hung back, suddenly shy in the presence of this mother you had mourned and missed for half your lifetime, this brother you had never known. "Come," your mother said, opening her arms to you. Her voice was just as you remembered, though roughened by time and hardship. "Let me see the child I've held in my heart for 18 years. You stepped forward, and then you were in her arms, breathing in a scent both foreign and achingly familiar, a mixture of unfamiliar spices and the essential essence of the woman who had given you life. John watched uncertainly, his gaze moving between you and your father, between his past and his future. Later, in the modest rooms provided for the ransomed captives, your mother told her story, 18 years condensed into hours of quiet narrative. She spoke of daily life as a domestic slave, of teaching John in secret about his heritage and faith, of illness and recovery, of moments of kindness and cruelty from her masters. "And our older son?" your father asked, the question he had both dreaded and needed to ask. Your mother's eyes filled with tears. "I saw him twice in all those years. He's a man of importance now in the day's court, respected, educated, fully committed to his adopted faith. He remembered me, was kind in his way, but there was a distance that could not be bridged. He has a wife, children of his own. His life is there, not here." Your father nodded slowly, accepting this final confirmation of what he had long suspected. "And you?" he asked, turning to John. "What are your thoughts of Iceland, this land you've heard about but never seen?" John considered the question carefully. Though he spoke Icelandic well, a testament to your mother's dedication, he had the thoughtful demeanour of someone navigating between worlds. "It's strange," he admitted, "cold and green and empty compared to Algiers, but it's where I belong, isn't it? By blood and faith, if not by experience." "You belong where you choose to belong," your father said gently. "The choice is yours now." John smiled slightly. "Then I choose to know the land of my parents, to learn what it means to be Icelandic after years of hearing stories. Whether I stay forever, that I cannot yet say." The journey back to Iceland proved too difficult for your mother's weakened health. In Copenhagen, she fell ill with a fever that her body, depleted by years of captivity, could not fight. You and your father remained at her bedside, John hovering uncertainly nearby, as she slipped away, free at last, but not in the way any of you had prayed for during those long years of separation. You buried her in Danish soil, as Gudridur had buried her son years earlier. Your father, grasping his son's hand on one side and yours on the other, spoke the funeral prayers in a voice that remained strong despite his grief. "She is home now," he said after the last amen, "not in Iceland, but in heaven, which is the true home we all seek." After the funeral, you returned to Iceland with your father and brother. John adapted to his ancestral homeland with a resilience born of his unusual childhood. Having navigated between cultures and languages all his life, he found ways to bridge the gap between his Algerian upbringing and his Icelandic heritage. As for your father, having completed his life's mission, however imperfectly, he lived only 2 more years before joining your mother in eternal rest. He died peacefully in the rebuilt Landakirkja church on Heimaey, the Bible open beside him, his final prayers offered for all his children, those present and the one forever absent across the sea. In the years that followed, the story of the Turkish raid became part of Iceland's cultural memory, a cautionary tale, a testament to the vulnerability of isolated communities, a reminder that even the most remote corners of the world are not beyond the reach of larger historical forces. For the families directly affected, like yours, the raid's impact extended across generations. Some captives eventually returned, forever changed by their experiences. Others remained in North Africa, creating new lives and identities. And those left behind in Iceland, like you, lived with absence and uncertainty that shaped your entire existence. Now, as you reach your own old age, you sometimes take your grandchildren to the cliff edge where you once stood as a child, gazing southward toward invisible Algiers. You tell them the story of their great-grandparents, how their great-grandmother was taken by pirates and lived for 18 years in a distant land, how their great-grandfather journeyed across Europe to secure her ransom, how their granduncle was born on a pirate ship and raised in 2 worlds. You tell them too about another granduncle they will never meet, who grew up in the day's palace and became someone new, with a different name and faith and life. You teach them that history is not simple, that families can be separated by forces beyond their control, that people can be both lost and found in unexpected ways. The world is larger and more complex than we sometimes remember here on our small island, you tell them. There are many ways to live, many faiths to follow, many places to call home. The important thing is to hold on to our humanity, our compassion, even in the darkest moments. Sometimes on clear nights you take the children outside to look at the stars, the same stars that shine over Algiers, over Copenhagen, over all the places your family's story has unfolded. You tell them how these constant celestial lights connected you to your mother during the long years of separation, how they remind us that beneath the same sky we are all part of a single human family despite our differences. The Turkish raid on Iceland in 1627 remains one of the most extraordinary episodes in your island's history, a moment when the isolated north collided with the distant south, when Lutheran Icelanders were thrust into the heart of the Muslim world, when families were shattered and partially remade across cultural and religious divides. In the quiet evenings of your old age, sitting by the fire in your turf house with your memories for company, you sometimes wonder about your older brother, now an old man himself, if he still lives. You imagine him in some sun-washed courtyard in Algiers, perhaps telling his grandchildren stories of the strange, cold island of his birth, of the parents and siblings he barely remembers, of how fate and history can sweep individuals into unexpected currents. Like the vast ocean that both separates and connects Iceland and North Africa, this story has no neat ending, no simple moral, no complete resolution. Some wounds healed, others never did. Some captives returned, others remained forever lost. Some questions were answered, others will linger eternally unanswered. What remains is the human capacity to endure, to adapt, to create meaning even from suffering. What remains is your family's story, preserved in your father's reissuebók, in letters carried across seas, in memories passed from generation to generation, in the quiet resilience of an island, people who faced an unimaginable horror and found ways to continue. As the northern lights dance across the night sky above Haimai, you offer a final prayer of gratitude for your mother's strength, your father's determination, your brother's adaptability, and for the complex tapestry of human experience that weaves together even the most distant shores under the same canopy of stars. In Iceland, in Algiers, and in all places between, the midnight sun and crescent moon continue their eternal dance, illuminating the endless stories of those who live, suffer, love, and endure beneath their shifting light.